Okay, so moral virtue is context specific. That's two. Three, it's a mean or a middle position between an excess of emotion on the one hand and a deficiency of emotion on the other. Now, these excess and deficiencies are what of emotion, or what Aristotle calls vices. We'll see. But first, every moral virtue for Aristotle concerns an emotion. Okay, every moral virtue concerns an emotion. For example, the moral virtue of courage, concerns, Aristotle thinks, the emotion we all have of fear. Courage concerns fear, and it concerns just the right amount of fear at just the right time and just the right place, in this middle position between an excess of fear on the one hand and a deficiency of fear on the other. That is, an excess of fear, which we might call cowardice, being a coward, being completely paralyzed by your fear. On the other hand, having no fear at all and being completely reckless. Both having too much fear and too little fear for Aristotle are vices. Having just the right amount of fear, where you can rationally regulate that, that's moral virtue as a mean or a middle position between an excess of passion and a deficiency of passion. So Aristotle is not some kind of Stoic. The Stoics were after Aristotle, but they believed that one should try to culminate and cultivate as much as possible apatheia, or apathy, to have complete rationality, something like Spock on Star Trek, where you have no emotion. This is not what Aristotle is saying. He's saying emotion is integral to being a virtuous and good and happy person. You need emotion, but you need to regulate the emotion between an excess and a deficiency. Another example is, Aristotle says, the virtue of righteous indignation, having not too much anger and not too little anger. Right? If you have too much anger, you're a hothead, or you're wrathful. If you have too little anger, you're he doesn't really have a name for it, but you're something like a pushover, or and that might lead to something like resentment. So you have to be angry at the right place at the right time toward the right person in just the right amount. That's moral virtue. So that's Aristotle's theory of moral virtue as a mean between an excess of emotion and a deficiency of emotion. I may ask you something like, true or false? Moral virtue always concerns an excess of emotion. False. It concerns either an excess or a deficiency.